Our next guest is your source for everything Vancouver Canucks prospects, which includes being the best way to get your info on the Abbotsford Canucks. He worked for the Canucks Army as an expert in the future of Team Whale. As well, he contributes to McKeen's Hockey, which provides deep hockey prospect coverage, including annual McKeen's Hockey Pool Yearbook, NHL Draft Guide, World Junior Championship Guide, and NHL Prospect Report. We are excited to welcome Dave Hall to the show. Welcome, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Yeah. It's nice. The season's over. We get a little time to chill out. So I thought it'd be a good time to reach out to you to get you on the show.
Oh yeah, it was did I expect to be covering it like intense hockey June 26th? Absolutely not. Like a couple days before the draft as well. So like I've definitely taken the last week and just kind of taken a breath and getting ready to do my my annual prospect rankings. So it's about to hype up again, but yeah, it's nice to kind of cool off a little bit here.
Yeah. Take a breath for once.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we always do on Nothing Imperfect here is we always start off by getting to know you. And one of those things we got to figure out where your allegiances lie. So we have a set of questions we ask to find out where that is. So start off the very obvious one. What is your favorite hockey team?
Unfortunately, at a very young age, I signed up for the lifelong journey of being a Canucks fan, which, as we all know, comes with its share of just emotional baggage. So yeah, I'm 35 now, so it's probably been about 30 years of the grind. So unfortunately, I'm a Canucks diehard. Always will be, always have been.
Do you have a favorite player of all time when you're growing up?
Yeah, I think, I've had a couple, obviously, as a young kid. It kind of changed as I went on. Pavel Bure was obviously just, everyone's go-to. But I think, and these are all going to be cliche, I know, but Marcus Nausen for me, that was really the height of my, I guess you can call it fandom, being an early teen to, 17 years old. Marcus Nausen was just the guy. And so, he was my first authentic jersey. I just loved his wrist shot. I just think Marcus Nausen was probably it. As much as it went against my Canucks, affiliation. I also really liked Peter Forsberg. I just think, he's the original, power forward skill guy. Like there's nothing he could do. His reverse hits were just something else. So I secretly, and he wasn't the only one, but I secretly just loved a lot of the Colorado Avalanche players. So I think those are probably my two guys.
Well, considering we grew up, I think we're kind of the same age. I'm 40 now. So I think it's that one of those, what do they call it? Stockholm syndrome, where you really fall in love with your captors. And I think the Colorado Avalanche were keeping the Canucks hostage for a couple of years there.
Yeah. Go down the list, all of them. Sakic, Hayduk, Tanguay, Blake. It just like, how could you not like the team? Even though we did it in secrecy, you couldn't really not like them. They were a powerhouse.
Do you have a favorite moment as a hockey fan?
As a hockey fan, well, again, I'll start off with the cliche. I mean, again, the 2011 run just stands out. I mean, especially for me, I'm in my early 20s. And so, all I cared about at the time was just, hanging out with buddies every second night and watching the Canucks go on this deep run. So for me, like some of the memories I have attached to that run is just, life. They just stand out like crazy. So those are the obvious ones. But then, like for me, back-to-back years of Matt Cook scoring game-tying goals in the last seconds, like those really stand out to me as just being like wow moments. Obviously, they never really panned out to anything much after that, but I just think those two goals specifically just really stand out in my head. But there's so many, but I think the slaying the dragon in that 2011, and but I think overall just anything 2011 was just the cliche, but the right answer.
Did you play hockey growing up?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite moment as a player?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still play. Obviously it's beer league now, but so I've got a lot of memories. Won a few championships, whether that was in minor hockey or even as an adult. My beer league games. I think if I were to think of like an all-time, it's not really a moment, but more so a time was it would probably be my final year of minor hockey. I just remember, at that point we all kind of realized we weren't really going anywhere. So we all, it was our last year, so with a big hurrah, we all just made sure we were on the same team. So I was on the same line with two of my best friends. I had two of my other best friends on the team on different lines, and we just ripped the league up. We all played house that year, and we kind of ran train on the league, and it was just a lot of fun. Just great times with some really good friends, and we also just obviously dominated the year. So I think just in general, that was probably one of the better years. It was a graduation year, so it was just like at an all-time high, really. So I think that was probably it for me.
So your first prospect pool, he didn't have you or any of your buddies making the NHL, eh?
No, we were a long shot. We were always those tweener guys. We're always the worst players on the next tier, best players on the last one. So eventually we just decided that's what it was, and we went for we went out with a bang, to say the least.
I think you might have already kind of answered this one a little bit, but I always ask like the most hated player rival that you wanted to actually be a Vancouver Canuck, probably Forsberg then, right?
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, I apologize. I did answer that question because it's not just Forsberg. It's pretty much all those guys. I mean, Sakic, Tanguay, Hayduke, they're all just Canuck killers. I mean, even a guy like Joe McGinley, like he just played the game kind of like Peter Forsberg, right? Like just a nightmare to play against and can just kill you in so many different ways. So I think, Jerome McGinley, Peter Forsberg, all those kind of guys, they just happen to all be the Vancouver Canucks rivals, but, you love to hate them.
Yeah, I always called them the Holy Trinity. It was Trevor Linden, Jerome McGinley, and Ryan Smith. For whatever reason, those three guys, they were the saints of the West Coast. So
yeah, there you go.
So let's talk a little bit about your career path to where you got where you are. Where'd you kind of get started with reporting, and how'd you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, so took a few years off after high school, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Like the avenues were all over the place. Like you can go into sports therapy, you could go into, there was a lot of business, so you could go into like sport management, where it'd be like either management or scouting or like a sports like agent or something like that. Or there was what I chose, this one, reporting and all that stuff. So it was one of those paths that kind of went all over the place. And through that, I was lucky enough to get an internship with the Victoria Royals. So I worked for them for a couple of seasons, and just doing communications, stats, press releases, stuff like that. And so that, looking back, that was, the easiest pathway for me to kind of, follow my dream. I was making some good connections. I then found out, not unfortunately, but I had found out that I was having a kid quite early. I think I was 23, 24. And so, unfortunately, in the junior hockey league, there's not a ton of money. So I decided to kind of switch tunes a little bit. And I went into rec, and I ended up spending about 8 years as a programmer at one of my local rinks. So I ran the rink there. I made all the programs, and it was just kind of my way of like staying in hockey, but still making, a decent living. But it still just never hit the itch. And so a couple years into that, I decided on the side just start writing. There was no real rhyme or reason for it. I started a blog. I just started getting some thoughts on page just because I wanted to. And then I started writing with a company called Dauber Prospects, and that kind of tailored in my love for hockey and also fantasy hockey as well. So that was a good little start. And then from there, just kind of climbed the ladder, if you will. I went managing editor there, and I also like dipped my toes into some other pundits, like the Hockey Writers and all these other ones. Basically anything I could sink my teeth in at that point was just what it was. And then fortunately, I was lucky to get a call from Canucks Army, and here I am today. So
that's cool. So then what does your like day-to-day look like during the season then?
It's a bit of a gong show, to be honest. Like the thing about prospects, it's going to be a little bit easier this year because they have like there's not a lot of their prospects will be in Abbotsford, so it won't be as hectic. But we're talking like 6 a.m. games in Sweden. Luckily, they haven't had a prospect in Russia for a while. But watching games at 2 a.m., clipping Vasily Podkolzin games at 2 a.m. Basically, just whenever you can, just watching hockey anytime, really. On Fridays I'll set some time off, and I'll have 4 screens going at the same time on my laptop, watching a BU game, a Saginaw game, a Sioux game, basically just whatever you can. So basically, I just cover all the prospects, whether that's Abbotsford, whether that's all around, and I just kind of cover them. I interview them at times, and I just make sure that I'm staying on the day to day of what they're doing, how they're doing, what they're doing, just everything Canucks basically, or everything prospects.
So you're one of the few people that have a Flow Hockey subscription then.
Yeah, unfortunately, I forked out the $400 it took. Like that, if my opinion, that's the biggest mistake. Like before with AHL hockey, I mean, I'm sure most people that are watching know you could just specifically look for the Abbotsford Canucks, and it was a fraction of the cost. You just purchased the Abbotsford Canucks. You could even do single games,
Mm-hmm.
but now they make you do everything, and so it's unfortunate. But yes, I do have a Flow account, and they've definitely made it so I can only watch them. I can't share my stuff anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of players in the NHL talk about their welcome to the NHL, lining up at a faceoff with Sidney Crosby or getting body checked by Scott Stevens or something like that? Is there a welcome to the NHL moment for Dave Hall?
Well, I wasn't getting body checked. You know what, though? I think I've had a few. But I think my ultimate was probably I got to spend a good week in Penticton last year, first with the young stars and then going to a little bit of the training camp. And I feel like I remember one moment I was down after one of their games. We were down in the concourse in the second rink there, and I look over and I'm about to interview Manny Malhotra for the first time, or the second time actually, but regardless, I was about to interview Manny, and then I look over and there's Daniel and Henrik Sedin standing right beside me, like just right there. They give me a nod, I give them a nod. There's no hi or anything like that. You can't talk to them and all that stuff, but they got there, and then you just got all these players that I grew up just idolizing, like even like a Michael Samuelson, all those guys. I even interviewed him just a couple weeks back at Dev Camp, but I just think I remember just having the CDs right there and just being like, this is pretty cool. And then Manny Malhotra comes out and I interview him one-on-one, and I just think that whole environment was probably just my first, like, wow, this is crazy. Oh no, of course Patrick Alvin and all those guys are all walking by, and so I think that was probably the moment where I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like this, I mean, like, again, it's the Sedins, right? They just have an aura about them. You're just
Yeah.
So I think that was probably it. Like I said, there's a few other moments, but I just think having all those people all in one time and just just being right next to all the guys that I grew up pretty much idolizing was pretty cool for me.
Can you tell the Sedins apart?
I'm not even lying. I feel like I can. I when I grew up, I actually was good friends with a pair of twins myself, and I found a way just by their facial features to figure them out, and I felt like that helped with the Sedins. I could just always kind of tell one had a bit of a slimmer face and just a slightly different look, and I like to think I can. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Again, I haven't gone up to them and be like, hey, Daniel, Henrik, but I feel like I have it down. I really do.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm thinking back to I had a pair of identical twins that I knew in high school, and one of them had their head shaved and one of them had long hair, and I didn't know they were twins to start. And it was very confusing the day I saw the shaved guy and then the long hair guy the next day. So I don't know if that helped me at all with the Sedins though.
Well, see, the unfortunate one with the ones that I grew up, they cut their hair. They even wore the same. I remember they played soccer together. They always wore the exact same soccer jacket that they both had from their team, and they wore that every single day. They had the exact same haircuts, but there was just slightly different facial recognitions. Anyways.
So let's dive into the Abbey Canucks a little bit, because obviously you were the man covering them all the way down to the Calder Cup win. I mean, the first obvious question is, what does this Calder Cup win for the Abbey Canucks mean to the Canucks organization overall?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, it's just nice to get a victory and give the organization, the fan base, and just everyone a little bit of a boost. It felt like it was just a really nice way to end a really bad season. So even though it wasn't the Vancouver Canucks, it just felt like a win regardless, right? And so I think first and foremost, that's it. And then just look into the players. That's just invaluable experience for some of these players. You got guys like Ty Mueller, Kirill Kudratsev, Jonathan Lekharimaki, who are all just going through their first years of pro hockey, North American pro hockey, and for them to go on this incredible run on a night-to-night basis. It's just invaluable experience for them to take on as they grow and continue to develop. A lot of them they're still U22, so it's just really invaluable. And then you obviously got guys like the older ones, the Atu Ratus, the Archie Baines, the Linus Carlsons. Like, it was a chance for them. I mean, not so much Atu Ratu because he was injured, but it was a chance for them to just step up and really just show their true colors of being able to lead. And so I just think overall, you can't teach a winning environment. And so it was just a valuable experience. So I just think all in all, it was great for the fans, great for the organization, great for the players.
So we know the Vancouver Canucks roster has a bit of a logjam right now in general. But does that mean there's still some spots for these AHL guys who went on this long run? Like, if you had to pull a number out of your head, what's the number of guys that actually see some substantial time in the NHL this year?
Substantial. I think there's a good number of players that are going to see games. Substantial, I would probably 3. Two to three. I mean, I think at this point, barring any movement, Atu Ratu is almost guaranteed a spot. I think he's just, whether that's a 3 or 4C, I think it's Atu Ratu's time. I think it's definitely his for the keeping. He's going to be competing with Max Sasson, who could, in my opinion, I've been on the Sasson. I go back and forth between Sasson and Sasson. I've been on his train for a while. I think he really can push for a fourth line center role. So, if they were to trade a guy like Bluger, I think both of those players are names that could get full-time roles as soon as fall. Then you got guys like Linus Carlson and Archie Baines, who are obviously both going to be on either side of the wing. And, it's really going to come down to trades. There's a lot of talk out there about a Joshua trade or, a Hoglander trade. And so if that's the case, that pushes Archie Baines up the ladder, who I think gets a chance. So I think those are the guys. Then you obviously on the back end, you got Tom Wielanders coming in, and then you also have Victor Mancini. It's going to be a battle between the two. I have a feeling that Victor Mancini, I think Tom Wielander will probably get an initial look just to see where he's at, give him a few games. But I think ultimately I would think, this is just me, I think Victor Mancini might get the more games in the long run next year than Tom Wielander. But I think those are guys definitely going to be on the radar.
Yeah, the Canucks, I think, have been doing a really good job lately, especially with a guy like DPD or Young PD or whatever you want to call him, giving him the time to adjust and get used to that North American professional hockey style, and then bringing them up once they're feeling confident about it. It's not a rush job like we've seen in the past with the Canucks. So yeah, I think I'm feeling the same way with Wielander. I feel like he's going to be an AHL guy, and Mancini's probably got the heads up over him just with the more NHL experience.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I think there's. So, I mean, for a market that hasn't had a lot of high-end talent, I mean, obviously we've had Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. Obviously we've had high-end talent, but I think there is a big pressure to rush. And if they're not in the NHL, they're busts. They're no good. I'm personally all for the slow cook. I think most players, unless they're just they're just number 5 overall picks. That they're going to be a star-studded player. I think the more the merrier. Like, let them soak in some time. Let them be the number 1 guy in Abbotsford or the AHL, whatever team it is. Let them just soak up that environment at the pro hockey level. I mean, the American Hockey League is still a really good league. Like it's not like it's just an easy streak and everyone thinks they're going to go down and score 1,000 goals. Like, it is a hard league. I mean, it's still pro hockey, and so I'm a big firm believer on, unless they're incredible studs, to have them down there mid-season, have a reevaluation. I mean, exactly how they did Jonathan Lekkerimäki last year. That's the perfect way to do it. Slow cook. And look, he wasn't ready either, and like, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets the exact same treatment next year, right? Like, a slow cook. Come Christmas, we'll see how he's doing. If he's scoring, at a point per game pace, then yeah, let's give him a look. But there's no rush, in my opinion. There's just no rush to have him. It just stunts development, in my opinion.
Is there a prospect in the Canucks system that is flying under the radar, or kind of a dark horse, you think, to make the NHL?
Well, I think before this year, I think it was Kirill Kudryavtsev. I think that was probably the obvious answer. This was kind of especially, having the national coverage. Obviously, this year was his coming out party. So I think that secret's out of the bag. But he's always been kind of my OG dark horse, as a 7th round pick. I mean, a lot of people don't really think that's going to amount to anything. And for fair enough reasons. But he just screams NHL hockey. Like he's not a super big or physical player, but he's just so smart, so confident, and he just doesn't rush anything. So I really like him. Um, even sticking with the defense, even a guy like Sawyer Minio, who should contest for a spot in Abbotsford this year. Like he's just, at the time, a lot of people thought it was a bit of a reach taking him in the third round, and I think he's really proven that the Canucks did a really good job at evaluating him. He's just turned out to be a really solid two-way, smooth skating defenseman who I think could eventually contest to play some games. And then up top, I think Vilmar Ulriksson is my guy. Like if there's any dark horse, he hasn't produced a lot at the junior level yet, which is, I wouldn't say it's a concern. It's definitely something of note, but at the same time, he's 6'6" at 20 years old now. But he was even at the time he was drafted, he was 6'6". He's 225. I mean, I'm 6'2", and I'm interviewing, and I'm going like this. I'm looking up to him, and I'm just, so like, and he doesn't skate like 6'6". He skates like he's 6'2", and so I just think he's got some good hands and tight. I just think there's a real profile that just screams NHL. I don't think he's going to be, a top six stud by any means, but, a middle six contributor who you can pluck to the front of the net on the power play, and he's going to score you, 15 to 20 goals, maybe not even that many, maybe 10 to 15 goals. But I just think he's a real dark horse as someone who I think, like I said, if you look at his junior numbers, you weren't very impressed. But I think if you watch him on a day-to-day basis, I do think there's at least something there. The profile is there for him to have something to do something, in my opinion.
So a couple of my viewers found out that you're going to be interviewed on Nothing is Perfect. So I asked them if they had any questions that they wanted to give to you. And I think the one who was most excited is my buddy. His name's Chris Vogel. And he's one of the guys who said, man, like I wasn't really into the Abbey Canucks, but I started following Dave Hall on Twitter and I just couldn't get enough of it. And so it was great to have that positivity throughout the year and the great coverage from you. So Chris Vogel, he's really, we played hockey for years together too. So
shout out to Chris.
Yeah. First question from him was, would you have selected Eklund, or was Coots the right pick?
Coots was the right pick. Look, okay. For starters, there was two guys that. No, sorry. There was one guy that if they weren't going to pick Coots, who I would have been okay if they picked, and that's Justin Carbonneau. I knew that Victor Eklund was probably going to slide. I did not expect him to be available to the Canucks, and so when that happened, I was even doing like my first ever spaces on Twitter just for fun. I just thought it'd be fun, and all of a sudden he dropped, and like I kind of panicked myself because what do? Do you take Victor Eklund now? Like there obviously is some offensive pedigree there, right? And that's just not something you're really getting with Braden Coots. I think there's a lot more to give in Braden Coots offensively, but I just think at the end of the day, Braden Coots is a guy that every team wants on your team. He's just a character dude who's going to play, second, kind of like Bo Horvat, right? Like he's probably going to be a 3C, but he could be a 2C. No matter what, he's going to play NHL games. He's going to penalty kill for you. He's going to play in all defensive situations. He's going to be relied upon for ages, and he's probably going to wear an A at some point. Like he's just that guy that you want in your team. He's a rink rat. All he wants to do is get better. And so I just think he just has that that's something that you can't find in all players. And so that's my reason number one. I just think no matter what, you're guaranteed an NHL player, which at 15th overall it's not a guarantee. Like a lot of people seem to think like, and with Victor Eklund, I think he probably will play NHL, but it's not a guarantee. He's a small Swede. And I just think, although everyone, now that they picked Coots over Eklund, I think in hindsight, everyone wants Eklund. But I feel like if they did pick Eklund, there'd be a whole another conversation of, wow, they really picked another small Swedish player for winger at that. So I just think Braden Coots is a right shot center who's guaranteed to play center ice minutes in the NHL. In my opinion, it's a slam dunk. I've been on the Braden Coots train for months now, and I'm happy they agreed. And I just think he's too good to pass up on. That's my opinion. I do understand that maybe you're leaving a bit on the meat on the bone with offensive potential with Eklund, but I just think there is more to give. Like Coots led. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, so I apologize. But Coots led the Seattle Thunderbirds in scoring on a pretty bad team last year with over a point per game. He then went to the U18s where he was captain, and he led that team, which had tons of first round talents on that team, and he led it. So I think there is a lot more to give in the offensive department. Like, he's a player that if surrounded by the right teammates, he could pop and get 90 points in the WHL. So I just think there's a little more to give, and I just think, in my opinion, it's Coots all the way. The only guy that I would have thought I would have been okay with was Justin Carbonneau, who's just, a very slick hand power forward, who's a right shot as well. So I think St. Louis got themselves a really nice prospect in Carbonneau, but I'm on Team Coots. So
That's good. I think we're both on the same page. I've heard him compared a little bit like Trevor Linden Jr. sort of a thing too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Just a heart and soul guy that's going to do whatever he can for the team and to get better. So
the other thing Chris wanted to ask you about was he's been seeing a couple of assessments coming out of the league's prospect pools being ranked. We've seen them anywhere, the Canucks being ranked between like 19th and like 31st. So pretty much the bottom third of the league. Are you thinking that's a little lower, or are we just biased because we're actually Canucks fans?
No, okay. The one thing that I think people can see this now. I've wrote enough that I'm not very biased. Like, I'll tell it like it is. I try to be as realistic as possible. I try not to hype people up. The thing I don't like about the summer is that it brings out a lot of these graphs and this isn't a knock. Like, I love the cards. I love the models. I love all that stuff. The problem with a lot of them is that they're NHLE base. So all it is production. So like it doesn't factor in a lot of factors that do need to be factored in. So I don't think by any means they have a very deep prospect pool. It's lacking high-end prospects. Like, no question about it. Like, even a Braden Coots, I wouldn't consider him a high-end prospect. He's probably, the team's third ranked prospect right now. And, he doesn't fall into that quote unquote blue chip potentially. But I don't think 31, like, I don't think I can have anyone tell me that the Edmonton Oilers prospect group is better than the Canucks. I just don't see how. I think if that's what you're saying, I don't think you're looking deep enough into the meat of, I just don't see it happening. So while I don't think they're 19th, I don't think they're 31st. So I think they're somewhere in the mushy middle. I'd probably put them around, I'm not looking at anything right now, and I haven't really done a huge deep dive since the draft. So, but I'd probably put them around like 25th, 26th, somewhere around there. Like, I won't sugarcoat it. It's not a strong pool, but it's also not 31st in my opinion. Like, there's teams that, like, Vegas barely they don't even have prospects. Yeah. So I don't know. 31st is a little low for me, but it's just because these NHLE cards, it's just, I see some guys at the draft. They're like, oh, this guy was taken 12th overall, which is a big reach in my opinion, because my model had him ranked 222nd, and it's because he was injured for most of the season, right? So it just doesn't. You just can't go off NHLE for everything, right? And so while there's some models that are great and they factor in a bunch of stuff, I have a really hard time with some of these player cards because they just don't take in a lot of stuff. So that's my rant.
It's a good rant.
Down with NHLE.
So summer plans, you said you're doing some prospect rankings coming up pretty quick here.
Yeah, that'll start next week. So I've got, we do top 20 at the Canucks Army with some honorable mentions. So at this point, it'll just be every single prospect in the system we'll be ranking because that's all they have. But yeah, got that. Got the summer showcase at the end of the month. Hopefully Braden Coots will be there. We'll see. And then we just wait until the new Seattle, Vancouver prospect camp in September. So just waiting on the dates on that. But I'm assuming it'll be the week before development camp or training camp. Sorry. So.
Awesome. Dave, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day and coming on the show. And we appreciate all your insights and look forward to your prospect rankings and everything you got going on next year.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Nothing is perfect.